Good afternoon, Felicia.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I am doing well. Where in the world are we?
We are back home in Windermere, Florida, but whether I was going to be able to get back here was a little touch and go for a minute.
It was, and I think these things that we're holding right here might give a little clue as to why it was touch and go. You want to tell that story?
First of all, one of these things is not like the other, and I don't know how well you can see this on film, but this is purple and this is blue. And this purple passport is part of the reason that I wasn't thinking that maybe I was going to be able to get back quite in the efficient way that I was planning on getting back. Um, if you have never lost your passport in a foreign country, let me just tell you that it is a whole adventure. Okay. Step one, always just panic because there's no other way about it. Like you panic. That's really all there is
Right.
to it. So for me, I had flown into Italy. Kind of last minute.
Yeah.
There was a family event and I was flying in last minute and I flew overnight. I got into Milan and for whatever reason, so I had my passport stamped at customs. For whatever reason, when I went to do my bag check, somewhere between when I went to pick up my bag and when I got on the air train to get from Milan to where I was going, I must have set down my passport, dropped my passport, something along these lines.
Who knows?
The way I found this out is the Italian police boarded the train and started asking people for their passports. So that was a good time. I didn't have it. And I kind of panicked, and I think the look of panic on my face and in my limited Italian, I'm trying to explain to these two police officers that I just had it. I just got on the train at the airport, and now I don't have it. I had like a crossbody sling kind of thing, and I'm digging through, and it definitely was not there. So that's how I discovered that it wasn't there anyway. So the next step is to figure out what to do once you do that, right? So in my case, there was a lot. So we kept calling the airport to try to see, did anybody find it? Was it turned into lost and found? Most people answering the phone at the Milan airport did not speak English, and so there was a little bit of a barrier there. My Italian's not great. My daughter's Italian's better than mine, but still definitely not fluent, right? So there was a lot of calling to see if we could get my passport back, and in the end, we actually asked a friend who is Italian to call for us and ask, and the answer was no, they did not have it. And so once they don't have it, then you got to make the next step of your plan.
What is that next step?
So the next step is to kind of go online and figure out in the country that you're in what the procedure is for getting a new passport. For me in Italy, there are about 4 or 5, I think 5 places, consulates, embassies, those kind of places, to see where you can go to get a new passport and what you need for documentation and all that kind of stuff. So you need some form of ID. So hopefully you didn't get your whole entire everything stolen. Maybe you just set it down or lost it like I did. I'm not entirely sure what the procedure would be if you didn't have ID. I didn't see anywhere in any step of the way. I didn't come across anybody who didn't have ID, nor did I see what the plan was enumerated as if you didn't have ID.
Yeah, one additional recommendation that's not really part of this lost passport process is you should have digital pictures or something of all these types of documents, your passport, your driver's license and whatnot, and store them in some type of cloud service, whatever your preferred one is. So you could probably go somewhere and at least get the numbers off the document, maybe print out a copy of it. Who knows what different agencies are going to take, but it's definitely a good idea to have a backup, at least picture of all those documents so you can access that information from pretty much anywhere in the world that you have internet access.
So for me, after finding out that the airport didn't have my passport, I boarded a train to Florence because that was the closest consulate to where I was. I was in Ferrara, so Florence was the closest consulate. I had to look up all the hours, check to see what the fees were, what kind of paperwork was needed, and so on. You do fill out a regular passport application again, and you also fill out a loss of passport affidavit, which you sign in front of them. So you could have, I guess, printed it ahead of time, but you still would have had to sign it in front of them. So it really wasn't going to save any time to have it printed ahead of time. When I got to the consulate, there was a really long line of people who were there for various reasons, including lost passports, mostly Americans, but also some Italians applying for visas, those kind of things, because that's the office of like passports and visas, right? So it took me probably about an hour and a half between standing in line and then picking up the paperwork and then filling out the paperwork before I actually got to see a person and start the process of getting my new passport. I was there right when they opened in the morning, and I read online that if you're there before noon that you can get your passport the same day. Same day does not mean right then, and I want to be super clear about that, okay? Because I was back and forth between whether I thought it meant right then and whether it didn't, but it wasn't. So altogether, my paperwork was finished at about 11 in the morning, and I was told I had to come back at 4 in the afternoon to pick up my passport. I was a couple hour train, well, an hour and some change train ride away from home at the time, and so I decided just to kind of stay in the city. But the process of the actual passport itself is actually kind of easy. So you fill out the paperwork, you fill out the affidavit. Now, it would have been even easier had I known this ahead of time. When you go to an embassy or a consulate, all of your electronics are confiscated. They're locked in a locker, and you're given a key, and you get to have them back when you leave. The pictures of my passport were on my phone. I didn't have a physical picture of my passport with me, like a copy of my passport. Had I had that, I would have already had my passport number. I would have had its expiration date. I would have had all of those things for the lost passport. I won't say it held up the process at all, because really it didn't. She just was like, all right, you don't have it, no big deal. But I feel like it would have been a more solid application, and the process just would have been a little more solid had I had those numbers.
Right.
So if you can get a copy, a physical copy of your passport, and stash that someplace that you're not carrying your passport with you, that would definitely be helpful when you show up at the embassy to tell them that you have lost your passport.
Yeah, like if you had that digital copy I mentioned earlier, maybe you can go to a internet cafe and print it out or something like that. Have you lost everything else?
Right, but you will not have your phone, not even your chargers, not your phone, not your chargers, not your AirPods, none of it. If it is at all electronic, they take it from you, they put it in a little sealed Ziploc bag, they lock it in a locker, they give you the key, and then the process reverses itself on your way back out. So the good thing about this process, if there could be a good thing about it, is that this is a temporary passport. It says emergency passport on the front. It is just exactly that. It costs $165 to get this new passport, but then you get a letter and a receipt that you paid your $165. This has to accompany your new passport application. So when you get back to the United States, you print a new application, you have this letter, you have this emergency passport. These three things go back to Department of State, and as long as it has not been 365 days, you get a new passport that you have already paid for with the receipt that's in this letter. So you don't have to pay again. So the $165 to get the emergency passport also covers when you get back to the States getting a regular 5-year passport again. 10-year passport again. So, sorry, 5 years for minors.
For kids, yeah.
5 years for minors, 10 years for adults. So that covers my new passport. So all I have to do now is I have to mail these things along with a new passport application to Department of State. And then I wait about 6 weeks or so, and my new blue regular passport will come to me in the mail. One thing to mention too, the application asks if you have a police report. It is not necessary to have a police report when you file for your new passport or for your emergency passport. So they will ask you at the window, do you have one? You say no and they move on. That's really all there is to it. You know, you may have a police report because it may be that your entire bag was stolen or something, you know, nefarious happened. That wasn't my case. I said, no, I didn't have a police report. There was nothing to report, right? I lost my passport. And she was fine with it. She just put it through. She was like, no problem. She just circled no, I didn't have a police report. And then we moved on with the rest of the process. United States passport pictures and European passport pictures are a little bit different in their size, and I was kind of worried because I was in Europe and the only place for me to get passport pictures were European passport places, right? So I went to a photo booth that told me it was a European passport place. It was off by millimeters kind of thing, and actually they took it no problem. So it wasn't, I even asked her when I got to the window, I said, this is a European size picture. Is that going to be okay? And she said, yeah, it's close enough to the American one that it's fine. You just have to make sure that your face is in the frame, that your shoulders are shown. Follow the regular passport guidelines as far as like what needs to be in the picture itself. And if it's a couple millimeters off, they're
Yeah, I
not
think you
gonna
have to
give
take your
a hard time
glasses
about it.
off, no hats, things
You're
like
not
that.
supposed to smile, all
Right.
those things. Like all the regular passport picture things still apply. It'll just be a little bit different size wise because the European ones are a little more square, whereas the United States ones are a little more oblong. That's all. But that was an easy, quick. I asked, she said yes, and that was that. After you report your passport stolen, it's no longer valid. So even if you find it later, you're not able to use it. So I think technically you're supposed to mail it back to Department of State after you find it. It's either way, it's not valid. You can't use it. You have to use this emergency passport. Now let's talk about what this emergency passport looks like when you're coming through an airport. You cannot scan it. So many places now you scan your passport. They take the picture of your face. It recognizes it, matches the two together, and you go through. You have to go to a person. You have to have it stamped. They're going to look through it. It's only a few pages long. It's not even as long as a regular passport. It's got like 5 pages in it or something. But they're going to look through the whole thing. Even when I went to board the plane and I handed her my boarding pass and my passport was open when I handed it to her. She kind of was looking at it like she was a little bit confused. It's because the quality of it is really bad. As you can imagine, a passport that's printed pretty much on the spot on somebody's laser printer in the back office of a consulate is not great quality. So once I turned it over and I showed her it was an emergency passport, she was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Because I think she was kind of thinking to herself, like, is this a fraudulent passport? Right. Should I be doing something about it? Because it really is, the quality of it is not a great quality. It's a bad picture. It's bad printing. It's lightly printed. It's thinner than a usual passport. So just make sure that, if anybody is questioning it, you just point to the emergency passport part and they'll understand it. They've seen it before.
Right. Well, that about wraps it up for Felicia's misadventures. This is just part 1 in what will hopefully be a series of travel advice videos. Not really where we wanted to start with, a practical example of losing your passport. But we will be doing more videos in this series. If there's something in particular you'd like to see, mention it in the comments down below. We might do things on what to pack, how to plan for a trip, things along those lines.
Or if you have questions about like what we've experienced. I mean, we can only really speak from our experiences, but we've done a lot of traveling.
Right.
So we've got some experience to draw some for sure. For sure. So if you've got some questions, throw that in the comments down below as well.
Yeah. But in any case, if you'd like to see more videos in the travel advice series, or you want to check out some of our other travel videos in the normal series of videos, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and please share it with your friends if you think they might be interested. As always, thanks for watching and have a great day.